We've built men to be loud, but not necessarily alive. We've taught men to conquer, but not really to connect. And we've raised our boys to believe that pain is power. But what we've really lost, the missing core of masculinity is reverence. Reverence is not fancy speech. It's not spiritual performance. It's not even just a phrase. Reverence is the ability to stop, to feel, and to honor what matters before the ego makes everything this battle. Men aren't struggling because we lack strength. We're struggling because we were trained to mistrust the soft parts of ourselves. We were handed these myths about manhood long before we ever really had a chance to grow into it. And we lived like the roles were real, right? Until we realized that we were exhausted and we were empty and angry and we didn't even know why. This is the hunger underneath all of this. We want love. We want peace. We want intimacy. But we keep reaching for these as if we're like fighters instead of fellow humans. We approach connection like this conquest and vulnerability like a leash, right? And softness like something that has to be earned instead of something that we can just actually receive. Reverence is what flips the rules. Reverence says we honor what we touch because we know the weight of our power. And weight that's well carried doesn't really hurt anyone, does it? But weight that's badly carried really hurts everyone around you. At Uber Bintegers, we're not holding back anymore. So let's maybe name this clearly. We don't heal by controlling emotion. We heal by decoding emotion. We don up talking about real men, but we don't talk enough about being whole men. We talk about confidence, but rarely do we talk about clarity. We talk about strength often, but rarely do we talk about softness that stays steady. We talk lots about attraction, but rarely do we talk about intimacy that's honest. We talk about being alpha, but rarely about being awakened. See, alpha energy that lacks reverence becomes a problem, I would say. And the manosphere didn't really heal men. It just figured out how to profit off of their wounds. It sold anger as an identity and dominance as leadership and numbness as strength. It encouraged men to make the war on this world instead of peace within themselves. And war always feels far easier than stillness, doesn't it? Until you meet yourself in the silence and realize that all the wars were just distractions in the first place. So let's tell the real story here. Boys who were mocked for crying grew into men who were terrified of tenderness. Boys who were shamed for feeling grew into men who were proud of their numbness. Boys who were abandoned at a young age grew into men who try to now own the world so the world can't own them back. Boys who were never given emotional safety grew into men who scream for respect but don't know even how to hold it responsibly. This is not manhood. That's unfinished childhood injuries playing out in their adulthood. And so we respected the wrong models. We worshipped the wrong myths. We flexed, in essence, the wrong muscles. And now we have to retrain everything. So here's the shift. The feminine is not the problem. It's the proof of where men are still broken or still becoming. And when a woman trusts you with her honesty and you panic inwardly, that panic is not love. It's fear that's wearing a surprise party mask. And men fear what we cannot predict. We reject tests that we resent, right? Not love itself. We men collapse in the gap between I want love and I don't trust love to stay. And the feminine has always, I think, been holy. We just weren't really shown how to honor it. Reverence is really the key that we never gave ourselves permission to grow in. A man who bows before emotional truth like before intuition, before softness, before care, before depth, before connection. This is the man who doesn't break because he realigns. He doesn't cower from emotion, he channels it. He doesn't try to solve a woman's emotional world. He just stays steady enough that her emotional world does not flood him back. Reverence re-educates the masculine. It says, we don't cage what we don't understand. We just sit in curiosity until we do. And curiosity is what the masculine needs to grow. Not tests, not slogans, not emotional shock collars. Curiosity that stays long enough to learn without needing to control what's meaningful. See, we grew love the wrong way, by earning it through performance instead of receiving it freely through presence. We grew pride to keep the vulnerable parts of us safe. But pride really became the wall that blocked the very safety that we wanted. Reverence is what removes that wall. It says, I see your softness. I honor your heart. I respect the feminine in you. Now I can protect the feminine beside you. A man of reverence does not leap into aggression when he disagrees. He pauses into awareness. And the pause isn't passive, it's actually disciplined ability to inhale long enough to decode pain for truth instead of shooting fear back into that room. Reverence is what trains the patience. Patience is what then trains steadiness. And steadiness is what earns trust. A real man does not run from the chaos. He stops being ruled by it. So reverence looks kind of like this. It enables you to see beauty without needing to own it. It enables you to feel anger without needing to hurt someone else to validate it. It enables you to listen without getting lost yourself. It enables you to have boundaries without becoming bitter. And it's here that you can actually receive love without auditing it like a suspicious sort of fine print. See, that's the kind of masculinity that brings warmth instead of burns. And it protects instead of panicking. We were raised to believe that strength means standing tall, right? And holding everything in. But that's backwards. Strength means standing open and holding everything real without needing to crush anyone to contain it or erupt anyone into submission because your ego is feeling upstaged by someone's radiance. Love is not conquered. Love is received, it's reflected, it's respected. Most men, we fear tears not because they're weak, but because they're decades old in the containment. And we're turning generational insult into a resurrection acronym. And so we've taken this word S.I.M.P, used in the manosphere pejoratively, but we've said strength in mastered presence is what S.I.M.P is now going to be reclaimed for, right? Presence that's able to shape, and strength that has softness and emotional courage that's detoxed from chaos so that vulnerability can become safe as a doorway you can walk through, not a loose wire that electrocutes anyone who is offering you love. Men have spent their entire lifetimes, I should say, attributing value to the wrong markers. And we've admired the grind and the applause and the dominance and the loudness or even the armor. But armor that protects you from the world while still exposing resentment on the inside becomes dictatorship. Diplomatic softness that audits for invulnerability becomes a transaction, not intimacy. And real intimacy doesn't have any tests associated. Masculine presence is not earned in the loud zone, but it's earned in the zone that's lived in. Reps, if you will, of honesty when you wish you could avoid it, but you choose to do it. Reps of boundaries that you wish you didn't need, but you still define and articulate. Say reps of saying what matters without becoming reckless. Doing more reps still of receiving care without feeling guilt, right? Reps of staying present when emotions on the inside are tumultuous and trembling. That's the emotional gym that most of us never had a membership to participate in. Reverence is learnable. And that's the good news. Most men, we missed our initiation into emotional nuance, not because we lacked capacity, but because we lacked guides and permission. But the safe man, the archetype today of a safe man looks suspicious because authenticity was not rewarded when we were boys. And now egos mask these closed nervous systems to protect themselves. But what if we were able to retrain this muscle? Not by being emotionally numb, but or even trying to perform niceness by cultivating this conscious presence that looks it but isn't, but listening and holding emotional tension without collapsing into aggression or avoidance. See, this is the emotional fluency that we desperately need in this renewed masculinity, where women don't soften around power. Women soften, I would say, around trustworthy power. Reverence is what turns attraction into alignment. So instead of leashing and begging for attention, men who can actually revere can now channel emotional honesty into precision rather than possession. And when your emotional dam finally is unclogged, those tears are not a problem anymore. They are basically a backlog moving, right? And when they're moving, you learn to drain and not to drown. You learn to widen and not to weaken. You're in essence bringing safety without shrinking yourself. Reverence does not say yes to everything. It just says yes to what matters and no to what doesn't. See, men fear stillness, and that's real because stillness removes the performance. But performance is really the enemy of your identity. Identity is what grows in reverence. And women crave direction, not domination. They crave devotion instead of pressure. I would say they crave presence and not the performance. And that's what men bring to every interaction that carries reverence instead of resentment. Because you can't protect what you're secretly resenting. Revering the feminine means you're honoring womanhood as a sacred force, not as a competition. And so it's here that we stop treating beauty as something to own and start experiencing beauty as something that we can witness without any agenda. Reverence does not cage. Reverence commits. Reverence, it doesn't manipulate. Reverence is what really magnifies, right? Reverence does not perform as much as it protects. Reverence doesn't really ask for submission, especially submission to enforce its strength. Reverence is what earns trust the quiet way, by consistency and by alignment. This is not a call for men to be passive. It's a call for men to be precise, to see the feminine inside and besides. Feminine as sacred. To understand its power as complementary, not competitive, because feminine energy is emotional intelligence that's expressed through intuition and through care. So here's the big truth, if I could reveal it simply and loudly. A man who understands the feminine does not cage it. He carries it with care. And the man who honors it eventually becomes whole himself through it. See, masculine power comes alive when it bows before emotional truth instead of just trying to bulldoze those who share it. Because vulnerability is not a weakness when it's held well. Vulnerability is really a place that the masculinity itself finally learns to stand in an open stance instead of standing armored in self-protection. We're not playing games here. What we're doing here is generational rewiring, rewriting. We're not leashing softness or talismaning niceness. This is emotional fluency we're dealing with here. We are not idolizing women or performing reverent poses This is masculine consistency that's detoxing itself from the ego. Because authenticity is what we're trained to avoid the most, isn't it? But it's the part that we need most right now. And when we bow before this, we stop breaking bridges, and inner world and outer world partnership potential can grow. We become these stewards of strength and instead of soldiers of suppression. And when we witness love's radiance without seeking to own it, masculinity now becomes, it begins this art of sacred investment in boundaries that protect instead of unhealed tests of self-worth that are tied to our performance. Your confidence does not come from how loudly you express, it comes from how fully you show up. Reverence is not optional, it's just often misplaced. We either serve our wounds or we'll steward our worth. And stewarding worth is not ego, it's inner honesty. Reverence is what changes the internal language. Emotion that is not expressed expresses itself through breakdown over time, as tension, as relational emptiness, as consumption for thirst for dominance, because presence without ego is just too threatening to the unhealed, right? But presence that is mastered, that's S.I.M.P reclaimed, right? Strength in mastered presence. A man fluent in presence listens long enough to decode the pain, to honor the emotion, not to exploit what's complementary, but to rest in love without auditing it for fine print, and to stand beside without the cage. Reverence is like a muscle that's built through repetition. The ability to see impact and pause before reacting, to choose tenderness with boundaries, to decode emotional noise for truth instead of letting fear dictate your presence. This is how we break the generational legacy of emotional illiteracy. Not by shutting it down, but by showing up steady when others around us may be raw. And that's why a gentleman archetype must not just perform, but he must also perceive and protect and be present. Reverence makes masculinity trustworthy again. Respect without performance, boundaries without bitterness, attraction without possession, discipline without dictatorship. This is all what comes with reverence. And we're not here for the empty praise. We're here for the real change, right? At this point in time, I would say on my website, I've got this course, In the Ashes of the Alpha Male, of the Alpha Male, where we guide men into rebuilding that fluency. Not it's in essence a journey back into emotional literacy and self-ownership and the sacred investment of one's heart so that strength can now become a refuge instead of this pressure cooker, right? So this course, it exists to support and to help you build that structure. Being a safe space for women has really nothing to do with shrinking your force or outsourcing your backbone. I would say real safety comes from emotional congruence, where your tone, your energy, and your actions all match your intentions and not just your impulse. Because impulse that fears softness becomes destructive. But presence that reveres softness becomes protective. Real men worship the feminine in rhythm and not necessarily religiously, meaning we rise beside the feminine because the feminine does not want to be conquered. It wants to be counted on. And that's, I think, where we evolve from raw masculine force into the forging of the new definition of S.I.M.P, strength and mastered presence. A presence that reveres intuition and softness and dialogue and inner world care, if you will. Presence that actually protects. That's not weakness. That's mastery. That's manhood intentionally practiced. The world did not tire of strong men, I would say. The world really tired of men who are unsafe. And the return of reverence, it means the return of men who can face emotional silence without flooding the room. To be able to teach our daughters to fear it less, and to teach our sons that feelings are a rep of strength, not a risk of autonomy. To extend the kind of presence that elevates without extracting emotional compliance from anyone who offers vulnerability without the shame. Because shame makes us cage what we can't really understand. But reverence is what makes us steward what we can't really own. So we either carry war or we carry wisdom. We're either chasing chaos or we're channeling our clarity. We either admire the grind or we're protecting our groundedness, right? We either lever love or we witness it and reflect it responsibly. Devotion does not make life easier. It just makes life more meaningful. And meaning that's well carried becomes a temple for others instead of this mayhem for the ego. So let's be clear, my dear brothers. When you touch, does it heal or does it hide? Because reverence answers that long before we open our own mouths. Next time, we're going to step a little further in tomorrow's episode into where devotion becomes direction, where love becomes leadership, where presence becomes protection with reverence at its very core. So that's episode 27. And it's here that we're going to sharpen further into worshiping the feminine by witnessing it as sacred instead of treating it like a competition that's disguised as confidence or conquest that's disguised as care. So that's where we're going to go next in tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, thanks for watching this episode. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear any epiphanies that came along the way for you, any challenges where you're like, I'm not sure if you got this one here, or have you considered? Let me know down below in the comments. See you tomorrow.